Freya Linton arrived in Hawthorne Rise just as the evening sun dipped behind the hills, casting long strips of copper light across the quiet Wiltshire road. The village welcomed her with its narrow lanes lined by moss-covered stone walls, and cottages with slanted roofs that seemed older than memory itself. She stepped out of the taxi with a weary breath, hoping this new beginning would finally loosen the knot that had tightened in her chest since Edinburgh. Her rented cottage stood at the edge of Elderfell Garden, the very reason she had come. A place of rare botanical wonders, or so the museum had claimed. Freya had imagined vibrant petals, gentle breezes, and tranquility. Yet the moment she walked through the garden gate to reach her cottage door, a breeze colder than the spring evening brushed her cheek. It felt almost like a whispered greeting. Inside, the cottage smelled faintly of lavender and old timber. She placed her bags on the floor and wandered towards the window overlooking Elderfell Garden. For a place meant to be bursting with life, the garden looked strangely still. Flower beds lay untouched. Vines curled along stone paths like abandoned threads. Not a single bird perched on the iron archways. A silence so deep it felt watchful. Freya shook it off. She was exhausted, and exhaustion often made the ordinary seem eerie. She unpacked a simple dinner and sat by the window. As the sky deepened to indigo, she heard it. A faint murmur. She froze, fork halfway to her lips. The sound drifted through the open window like a sigh caught in the wind. It came from the direction of the eastern flower beds, where clusters of purple bloom swayed despite the air being completely still. Then, as clear as though someone stood beside her, a soft voice breathed a single word. Freya. Her skin prickled. She pushed back her chair and stepped outside into the cooling night. The scent of earth and flowers wrapped around her, yet everything felt unervingly quiet. She walked towards the purple flowers, every footstep crunching softly on gravel. The whisper came again, tender yet urgent. Freya. She felt a tug inside her chest, a feeling she had not experienced since childhood when she used to wander alone in the Scottish fields and swear she heard her own name spoken by the wind. The flowers rustled. Freya knelt, hesitating. As her fingers brushed their petals, a memory jolted through her like struck lightning. A voice younger than her own, filled with fear, echoed in her mind. A voice she recognized but could not place. Help me. Freya stumbled backwards, breath shaking. She stared at the flowers, but they were still. Silent. Innocent. Her rational mind scrambled for answers, blaming stress, travel, or imagination. But somewhere deep inside, a truth began to stir. Someone had spoken. And Elderfell Garden had been waiting for her. Freya barely slept. Every time she closed her eyes, the whisper floated back to her, soft as a breath yet heavy enough to press against her thoughts. By dawn, she gave up on rest altogether and wandered through the cottage, hoping movement would steady her nerves. The morning sun cast pale gold across the wooden floor, revealing dust motes dancing in quiet spirals. As she made tea, the kettle whistled louder than usual, making her jump. She let out an uneasy laugh at herself. It was only her first night, and she was already acting as though ghosts lurked behind every corner. Still, her gaze drifted towards the garden outside. Elderfell Garden appeared calm, but the memory of the voice lingered like a shadow she could not shake off. She spent the day exploring Hawthorne Rise. The village was small, with a bakery that smelled of warm bread, a bookshop filled with yellowing pages, and a narrow high street where locals exchanged polite nods. Some greeted her kindly, but others glanced at her with an almost restrained caution, as if they knew something she did not. By late afternoon, Freya returned to the cottage feeling more curious than afraid. She wanted answers. The whisper might have been imagination, but the unease she sensed from the villagers was real. Something about Elderfell Garden unsettled them. As she walked inside, her foot caught on a loose floorboard near the fireplace. The wooden plank lifted slightly with a creak. Freya frowned, crouched, and tapped the board. It was hollow underneath. A hiding place. Her pulse quickened. She slid her fingers beneath the edge and prized the board up. Beneath it lay a small, dust-covered tin box. Freya lifted it carefully, brushing away the grime. The box was surprisingly cold, as if it had been stored in shadow for decades. Inside, wrapped in a faded ribbon, was a diary. The leather cover was cracked and brown with age, and a name was written in looping ink along the inside page. Clara Linden. Freya's breath caught in her throat. She knew that name. It had been mentioned in village records, though details were scarce. A girl who disappeared in 1974, leaving behind no clues and no farewell. Why was her diary hidden in Freya's cottage? She turned the first page. The handwriting was neat but restless, as if written by someone who frequently looked over her shoulder. Today I heard the garden speak again. They say it only happens to those who need to be heard. I think it is calling to me. I think it knows something about my past. I think it knows something about my future. Freya's fingers trembled. Her eyes raced further down the page. Mum says the Linton family used to live here long ago. She says they had a daughter who could hear things others couldn't. She says the garden kept her secrets. Freya froze. Linton. Her surname. A chill rippled through her body. She skimmed the next entry. If the whispers return tonight, I will go to the eastern beds. They know my name. They have been waiting. Freya lowered the diary, her heart pounding. Clara had heard whispers. Clara had been drawn to the eastern flower beds. And Clara had vanished. A soft sound echoed through the room. Freya lifted her head. The whisper drifted through the window again, faint and trembling like someone calling from far below the earth. Freya! And this time, it sounded exactly like the voice of a frightened girl. Freya stood frozen, every instinct urging her to shut the window, to hide, to pretend she had imagined it all. But fear and curiosity pulled at her with equal force. She stepped slowly towards the window frame, gripping the sill as the whisper faded into the hush of early evening. The garden beyond lay bathed in soft gray light. Nothing moved. The purple flowers swayed gently as if stirred by a breeze that did not touch the rest of the garden. Freya's breath clouded faintly in the air, colder than the season allowed. She backed away and closed the window, forcing herself to remain calm. She needed answers, and the only person who might provide them was the project leader, Dr. Rowan Bexley. He had spoken cautiously about the garden on her first day, but she had sensed he was holding something back. Determined, Freya grabbed her coat and made her way through the village. The sun had dipped behind the rooftops, casting long shivering shadows along the narrow lanes. Lanterns hung at the doorsteps flickered uncertainly, as if struggling against an unseen current. Rowan lived in an old rectory at the far end of Hawthorne Rise. Freya hesitated before knocking on the heavy oak door. After a moment, footsteps approached, slow and reluctant. The door opened to reveal Rowan, spectacles perched crookedly on his nose, a mug of tea in hand. His eyes widened when he saw her, but not with surprise. With worry. Freya. I hoped you wouldn't come. She blinked. I need to ask you something. About the garden. Rowan stepped aside silently and allowed her in. The interior of the rectory was warm, filled with books and the faint scent of burnt firewood. Freya sat, gripping the diary she had brought with her. Rowan, she began, voice unsteady. I found this beneath the floorboards. And I heard something last night. A voice. She paused. Calling my name. Rowan closed his eyes as if the words pained him. He set his mug down slowly before speaking. You should not have heard anything, he said. Not unless the garden recognized you. Freya stiffened. Recognized me? What does that even mean? Rowan rubbed a hand across his face. Elderfell Garden is older than the village itself. Some say it was cultivated by a woman who believed that the earth remembered every sorrow ever poured into it. The villagers buried more than seeds there. They buried heartbreak, guilt, grief. And the garden listened. Freya felt cold. Listened how? It keeps echoes, Rowan whispered. Whispers of those who carried burdens too heavy to speak aloud. Only certain people can hear them. And those people always share a connection to someone the garden remembers. Freya's stomach tightened. Someone like Clara Linden? Rowan's jaw clenched. Clara should never have gone near the eastern beds. She was hearing things for weeks before she disappeared. We did everything to keep her away, but she felt drawn to it. As if the garden needed her. Freya opened the diary and placed it gently on the table. This was hidden in my cottage. My family name is in it. Rowan stared at her, his expression shifting from worry to something far more troubling. Resignation. I hoped it was coincidence, he murmured. But if you heard the garden calling you by name, then it means the same thing it meant for Clara. Freya's pulse hammered. What does it mean? Rowan leaned forward, voice barely audible. It means the garden has chosen you. And once it chooses someone, it never lets go. A gust of wind rattled the windows. From outside, faint yet unmistakable, a whisper rose through the quiet. Freya! Her blood ran cold. Rowan's face turned ashen. You need to stay away from the eastern beds. But Freya, trembling, knew something deeper. The eastern beds were already calling. Eliza had always known that the wood behind Westmeadow held its own quiet temperament. In spring it was gentle, in summer drowsy with heat, but now beneath the early winter sky, it felt watchful. Every breath of wind seemed to carry a murmured warning. She pulled her coat tighter and stepped between the trees. The ground was soft with damp leaves, and the river that bordered the estate murmured somewhere ahead. She had walked this path as a child, yet tonight it felt unfamiliar, as though the forest had shifted its bones since she had last come. Eliza kept replaying Aunt Celia's trembling voice in her mind. The map. The hill. The truth buried beneath the soil. None of it made sense. George never ran. If he left a clue, it was because someone had forced his hand. She walked deeper, the air turning colder, the trees closing in. A few meters ahead, something caught the moonlight. A thread of white cloth fluttered from a low branch. Eliza paused. Her heart tapped sharply in her chest. It was a torn strip of fabric, snagged and dangling, swaying gently as though a hand had brushed it seconds earlier. She reached out and touched it. Wool. Thick. Coarse. Just like the gray jumper George had worn since he was 17. Her breath caught. Near the roots below the branch, the soil was disturbed. Leaves had been cleared aside, as though someone had knelt there recently. She crouched and examined the ground, her fingertips brushing cold earth. The marks were fresh. Someone had been here. Someone who knew the wood. Someone who wanted to hide something, or perhaps retrieve it. Eliza straightened, her pulse quickening. This was no longer just a rumor or a suspicion. George had come this way. He had either left the cloth behind accidentally or used it to signal something. A branch cracked sharply behind her. She spun round, her breath forming a pale cloud in the cold air. Nothing moved among the trees. Yet she felt it again. That uncanny sensation of being observed. A presence lurking just out of sight. Eliza stepped back slowly, her boots pressing into the leaf litter. The air felt tight, as if the forest itself were holding its breath. The silence was absolute. Then she heard it. A soft whistle. 3 short notes. A tune she had not heard for years. Her father's whistle. The one he used to call George in from the riverbank at dusk. The notes drifted through the trees, faint yet unmistakable. Eliza turned towards the sound, her heartbeat thundering. No one knew that whistle except her father, her cousin, and one other person. Someone she had not thought about in years. She took a step forward. Then another. The melody repeated, drawing her further into the darkness. When she reached the old fallen oak, the whistle stopped. The forest was still again, as though silenced by an unseen command. And there, carved freshly into the bark near the trunk, was a symbol she recognized instantly. A simple circle with a single line through the center. George's secret mark. He had left it for her. Recently. Deliberately. Eliza swallowed hard, her breath trembling. Whatever had happened 5 years ago had begun again. And this time, it was calling her directly into the heart of it. The vault beneath Westmeadow Hall had always been off limits, a relic from a century past. As children, Eliza and George had whispered wild stories about what lay behind the heavy oak door. Her father always claimed it was merely a storage room, though his eyes had carried a shadow whenever he said it. Tonight, that shadow felt real. Eliza descended the narrow stone steps, the cold air growing damp and metallic. She held the brass lantern Aunt Celia had given her, its glow trembling across the walls. The edges of the staircase were worn smooth, as if countless hurried feet had once traveled the same path. When she reached the bottom, she hesitated. The door stood slightly open. It was barely noticeable, only a sliver, yet enough to send her pulse racing. Aunt Celia swore she never touched the vault. No one had keys apart from her father, and he had been gone for 5 years. Eliza pushed the door gently. It creaked, loud and jarring, echoing through the chamber beyond. The vault smelled of old paper, dust, and something else. A faint, sour trace of damp earth. She lifted the lantern. Shelves lined the walls, filled with aging ledgers, tin boxes, and yellowing documents. In the center stood a wooden table, once polished to a deep sheen but now marred by scratches. And on its surface lay an envelope. Her name was written on it in familiar handwriting. Eliza's breath faltered. She approached slowly, her fingers trembling as she reached for the envelope. It was sealed with dark red wax. Fresh. Untouched by time. She cracked the seal. Inside was a single sheet of paper. Meet me where the river bends. Midnight. Come alone. No signature. But she knew that handwriting. Every loop, every slant of the ink. George. She stepped back, her heart thudding so loudly she feared it might shake the very air. Was he alive? Had he been hiding all this time? Was someone forcing him to lure her? Her thoughts tangled as she searched the vault for more clues. That was when she saw it. Near the far wall, a large tin box had been dragged out from a lower shelf. Its lid sat askew, as if someone had rifled through it in a hurry. Eliza crouched beside it. Inside were photographs. Old ones. Some in black and white, others faded with age. She lifted them carefully. The first few showed Westmeadow Hall in its early years. Then came images of her father, younger, stern-faced. Aunt Celia, smiling faintly beside him. A group of men Eliza did not recognize. Then she uncovered a photograph that drained the warmth from her hands. It showed George as a boy, standing beside a woman Eliza had never seen before. The woman's face was gentle, her hair dark, her smile soft. But it was the caption scrawled beneath the image that made Eliza's breath stop completely. George with his mother. Eliza stared at it. George's mother had died when he was an infant. Her father said it, Aunt Celia confirmed it, everyone accepted it. But this woman was alive when the photograph was taken. She looked healthy. Aware. Present. The story they had been told all their lives was a lie. Eliza placed the photograph down, her hands shaking. Behind her, a soft rustle broke the silence. She spun around. The vault door, which she had left open, was slowly closing. Not by accident. Not by draft. As though someone on the other side was pushing it shut. Her lantern flickered. The air tightened. And in the final second before darkness swallowed the room, she heard it. A voice. Soft. Whispered. You should not have come here. Eliza ran through the corridors of Westmeadow Hall, her breath coming in sharp bursts. She had pushed the vault door open with all her strength after fighting the suffocating darkness for what felt like an eternity. Now, with the photograph of George and the mysterious woman still burning in her mind, she could barely steady her thoughts. Meet me where the river bends. Midnight. The note's message clung to her like a weight. Midnight was only an hour away. She grabbed her coat, wrapped a scarf around her neck, and left through the back door, refusing to look at the windows in case someone was watching. The night air outside was brutally cold, the kind that seeped into bones and pressed against the lungs. The moon hung low, spilling pale light across the fields that stretched towards the river. The pathway to the bend was familiar from childhood, yet it felt alien now. Branches creaked overhead, their silhouettes clawing at the sky. The sound of water grew louder as she approached, its flow unsettlingly fast for the season. Eliza slowed her pace. Someone was standing by the river. A figure, still and solitary, half hidden by the leaning willow tree. She quickened her steps, though every instinct warned her to turn back. As she drew closer, the figure shifted slightly, as though acknowledging her presence. Her heart thudded. The lantern light revealed a man's outline. Tall. Gaunt. Shoulders tense. George, she whispered. The figure did not move at first. Then, slowly, he stepped forward into the moonlight. It was him. But not the brother she remembered. This George was thinner, older in a way that had nothing to do with time. His face was sharper, his eyes hollowed, as if he had been living on the edge of fear for far too long. Eliza, he said, voice unsteady. You should not have come alone. Her breath caught. Then why did you call me here? His eyes flickered. I did not write that letter. The world seemed to tip sideways. What do you mean? It was your handwriting. It was copied, George murmured, glancing over his shoulder at the shadows pooling near the trees. Someone wants you here. Someone who needs you to know what happened. But they also know that if you learn the truth, everything changes. Who? Eliza demanded. And why hide from me? Why disappear for 5 years? George stepped closer, gripping her shoulders. His hands were ice cold. Because I saw what they did. I saw what happened to Mother. Eliza stiffened. Mother? George, your mother died when you were a baby. That was the story, he said bitterly. But she didn't die. They hid her. Then they hid what became of her. Eliza. The voice came from the woods behind them. Clear. Familiar. Aunt Celia stepped into view, wrapped in her long brown coat, her expression unreadable. The lantern in her hand cast a trembling circle of light around her. George's grip tightened. Run, he whispered. Aunt Celia took another step forward. You two shouldn't be here, she said softly. The river sees more than it should. Eliza felt a chill claw its way up her spine. Aunt Celia. What have you done? The older woman's smile was thin. Regretful. Even tender. Only what was necessary. George pulled Eliza behind him, shielding her. She knows. Celia. She found the photograph. Celia exhaled slowly, a breath too heavy for the night. Then she spoke the words that shattered everything. She was never supposed to know the truth about her mother either. Eliza froze. Her mother? The river roared louder, as if awakened by the revelation. George stepped back, pulling Eliza with him. Celia approached, her lantern steady in her grip. Her eyes glistened, not with malice, but with a sorrow that seemed ancient. Eliza, she said gently, we tried to protect you both from the same fate. But now that the river has spoken, it will demand the truth. A cold wind whipped across the water. The willow branches swayed, and the ground beneath their feet trembled with a low pulsing hum, as though something beneath the riverbed had been waiting for her. Eliza's heart raced as the hum from the river grew louder. The wind whipped through the willows, tugging at her scarf, her hair, her coat, as though trying to pull her into the current itself. George's hands gripped hers tightly, grounding her, though neither of them dared take their eyes off the trembling water. Aunt Celia stepped closer to the riverbank, the lantern's glow flickering against her face. Her expression was somber, almost sorrowful, yet there was a firmness in her eyes that told Eliza she would not be deterred. You need to see this, Celia said quietly. The truth is not above water. It has always been below. Eliza shivered. Below? What do you mean? Celia pointed to a section of the river where the current seemed slower, darker, almost unnatural. There is a vault beneath the riverbed, hidden by time, guarded by those who came before us. George's mother. Your mother. She was taken there for her protection. Eliza's knees weakened. Taken to the river? But how? Why? They feared her knowledge, Celia said. Knowledge of the past, of what the estate once held. They believed the river could keep her hidden, safe from those who would use her. But the river remembers. It always remembers. George tightened his grip on Eliza. It is true. I saw her once as a child, through the veil of water. She spoke to me, and then they took her away. I've spent 5 years trying to uncover the path back, and now you are here. Drawn by the same force that always calls our family. Eliza looked at the water, black and rippling. She could almost imagine a shadow moving beneath the surface. The hum vibrated through her chest, a low, steady pulse as if the river itself was alive, aware, waiting. Celia knelt beside the water and traced the current with her hand. There is a passage, hidden in plain sight. The river conceals it until someone with the bloodline approaches. Tonight, the river recognizes you. Eliza's stomach turned. You mean, I have to go in? Celia nodded. It is the only way to understand. To see the truth of our family and of George's mother. The river does not lie, but it demands courage. George swallowed hard. We both have to go. Together. Eliza took a deep breath, her fingers intertwined with George's. Then, together, she whispered back. The wind shifted, blowing icy mist across their faces. The river's hum intensified, almost like a call, a summons. Eliza felt her pulse match the rhythm, a nervous alignment with something larger than herself, ancient and patient. Celia lifted her lantern higher. The passage will open, she said. But beware. What lies beneath may test everything you believe. Eliza looked at George, at the river, at the black mirror of water stretching before them. She could hear the echoes of all the whispers, of all the missing, all those the river had claimed, all those who had been drawn into its depths over the generations. And then the water shimmered, a subtle ripple that seemed to form a gateway, faint yet undeniable, as if the river itself had parted to reveal its secret. Eliza inhaled sharply. We have to step forward. George squeezed her hand. No turning back. Together, they stepped towards the edge, the icy water lapping against their feet. The hum of the river rose into a low roar, enveloping them, pulling them into the unknown. And beneath the surface, something stirred, waiting. Eliza and George plunged into the icy water, the river immediately swallowing them in darkness. Their hands remained clasped, guiding each other through the rushing current that felt alive, almost aware. Every instinct screamed to turn back, but there was no way to retreat now. The river had claimed its attention and would not release them until its truth was revealed. The world above vanished. Only the hum of water surrounded them, vibrating through their bones. Shapes moved beneath the surface, shadows that twisted and shifted, some almost human, some impossibly long and serpentine. The river's pulse matched their own, steady, relentless, demanding courage. "Keep moving," George whispered, his lips close to her ear. "The passage. It's just ahead." A faint light glimmered in the distance, soft, almost beckoning. As they approached, it revealed a stone arch embedded in the riverbed, carved with symbols Eliza recognized from the vault in Aunt Celia's journals. The water parted around the arch, revealing a hidden chamber beneath the river, its entrance framed by centuries of sediment and roots. Inside, the chamber was dimly lit, the walls etched with inscriptions and images of the estate, past generations, and people whose names had been forgotten. In the center, seated on a raised stone platform, was a woman. Eliza froze. It was her mother. Older than she had imagined, serene, and surrounded by a faint luminous glow that seemed to rise from the river itself. Her eyes met Eliza's, and in that moment, no words were necessary. The connection was instant, deep, as though they had known each other through lifetimes. "Eliza," her mother said softly, her voice blending with the hum of the water. "I have waited." George swallowed. How are you here? Why hide?" "My life was taken from the world above to protect the truth," she explained. "There are forces that would have used knowledge of our family to control, to harm. The river became my refuge. And now, it calls you because the time has come to reclaim it." Eliza stepped closer, her heart pounding. "What do we do?" Her mother extended a hand. "The river demands acknowledgement. We honor the past by facing it. By choosing courage over fear. Only then can the cycle end." The water stirred around them, rising like a tide of memory and shadow, yet not threatening, only encompassing. Eliza and George joined hands with their mother. A warmth spread through them, replacing the cold, the fear. The hum of the river swelled into a chorus, echoing through the chamber, through the river, through time. Symbols carved into the arch glowed, illuminating the walls with stories of bravery, secrets kept, and sacrifices made. The past unfolded in moments, showing the truth of Westmeadow, the lies that had protected and imprisoned them, the generations caught between duty and desire. When the light finally dimmed, the river calmed. The chamber faded, leaving them at the bend, drenched but alive. Their mother's presence lingered in a shimmer above the water, then slowly, silently, she returned to the river's embrace, leaving Eliza and George together on the bank. George looked at Eliza, eyes wide, a mixture of awe and relief. We saw her. The river. It's done." Eliza exhaled, a breath she didn't know she was holding. The hum was gone. The air was still. Yet something had shifted. The family's past, the hidden truths, the secrets buried for generations, they were no longer lost. They had been faced. And with that courage, a new beginning waited. Together, they walked back through the misty fields towards Westmeadow Hall, hands intertwined, hearts steady. The river behind them whispered softly, a lullaby and a promise, carrying the weight of the past, but offering freedom to those who dared to step forward. The dawn broke over Westmeadow Hall, soft and golden, casting the estate in a gentle light that made the recent night feel almost unreal. Eliza and George emerged from the fields, water dripping from their clothes, but their eyes held a spark that had not been there before. The river behind them flowed quietly, serene, as if it too had released a long-held secret. Inside the hall, Aunt Celia waited. She had removed her coat, her expression calm, though her eyes betrayed relief. She nodded as they approached. "You did what few could," she said. "You faced the river. You saw the truth." Eliza glanced around, the familiar rooms now seeming both old and new. Each corner, every worn floorboard, carried the weight of generations, yet there was a lightness now, a sense that the past had finally found peace. George spoke first, voice soft but steady. "We know what we must do. The family can no longer be bound by secrets and fear." Celia smiled faintly. "And you will guide them, Eliza. You and George. The river has chosen to pass its memory to those willing to carry it responsibly." Eliza nodded, feeling the weight of responsibility settle comfortably on her shoulders. No longer a burden, but a legacy. She moved to the window and looked toward the river. Mist still lingered, but it was gentle now, a silver veil that hinted at the magic beneath the surface rather than concealing danger. The estate and its secrets would remain, but the fear that once clung to every corner was gone. George stepped beside her, his hand finding hers. "It feels like we've finally come home," he said. Eliza smiled, letting the warmth of the morning fill her. "We have. And now, we can ensure that nothing hidden will threaten those who come after us." Aunt Celia approached, placing a hand on each of their shoulders. "Remember, the river's lesson is simple. Courage, truth, and honor. Keep that, and the past will always guide the future." Together they stood, watching the sun rise over Westmeadow Hall, the river glistening as if winking at them. In that moment, the weight of generations lifted, replaced by hope, understanding, and the quiet certainty that their family's story, once fractured by fear and deception, was now whole. And the river whispered, softly, as if in approval,